Welcome everyone to another episode of Open Door Policy, where we sit down with various disciples who are living out the call to unleash the gospel in new and exciting ways all across the Archdiocese of Detroit. And today we are blessed to be joined with Vickie Figueroa, a parishioner at Corpus Christi Parish and the head of Black Catholic Ministries in Detroit. Vickie, it's great to be with you.
Yes, it's great to be with you as well. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
And as always, the one, the only, the awesome Danielle Center. Danielle, how are you?
Hey, friend. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm ready for the quarantine to be over. You know, like maybe
Dude,
that's the most obvious statement
to another.
ever. But I'm doing okay. But I'm ready to be de-quarantined.
You know, I was talking to someone and they were like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, you know what? Like, every plane of my life is like minorly inconvenienced, but also we're in a global pandemic, so like you can't really complain. So heard that. But do you have any graces?
I thought we were exchanging like complaints rather than graces today. But yeah,
I'm here for that.
Just talking about graces. I had a wonderful opportunity very recently to do some social distancing, visiting with family. I got to go visit my dad, and maybe not so great social distancing, but he wanted a haircut, and I got to go try out my my barbering skills with him.
Do you want to give me a haircut? Because I am also
maybe
in
you
the
should
same
talk
boat as
to
your
my
father.
dad. Maybe you should talk to my dad first and hear how it went.
I'll read
but
like
that was a
the
lot of
sole
fun.
Google review. He leaves it anonymously. You're like, Dad, you're the only guy whose hair I've ever cut. He's like, I'd give it 2 stars.
Hey, you know, not looking to make a living, just trying to do my duty.
It's honest work.
How about you, Danielle?
Well, you know, like the thing that we are allowed to do during quarantine is go hiking. So luckily it's a hobby of mine, one could say. So I went, and last weekend was nice weather. So I went out and hiked. There were, do you know Father David Fons over in Lansing Diocese? Yeah,
Sure.
You're the one who introduced me to him. And he walked the Camino this past summer. So we met up, did some hiking, and Jesse met me too. So it was good, you know.
Awesome.
It's the great outdoors. Got a little sunburned.
That's great. Well, let's dive into what we call Rapido en Fuego Preguntas, or in English, rapid fire questions. And Vickie, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
I'm ready. Let's
Here's
go.
the
All right,
first
Danielle.
one. What was your first job?
Working at an amusement park in Youngstown, Ohio, behind the pizza and Italian sausage stand.
So a little technical difficulty with Danielle. I'm going to jump in here. Vickie, what's the most beautiful church you've ever visited?
Immaculate Conception in Youngstown, Ohio.
All right, I'm sensing a trend here. What song what song has been stuck in your head these days?
Lizzo's Why are men great till they gotta be great?
Yes. I just took a DNA test. Turns out. Good.
All right, Danielle, take it away with number 4.
I got you. What, Vickie, in which fictional world would you like to live?
I'd like to live in fantasy, like Temple of My Familiar or Children of Blood and Bone, that type of thing.
Love it. And what is your favorite breakfast food?
Quiche.
Nice. And I think I should take number 6 too.
Yeah, go for it.
What was the location of one of your most powerful encounters with God?
Sedona, Arizona.
Get it.
Do you have a favorite Bible verse, Vickie?
I believe it's Psalm 118 or Psalm 119. I get the numbers mixed up, but this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
All right. Have you met anyone famous other than Danielle?
Wow.
Other than Danielle, yes. The last coach of the Lions, not Matt Patricia, but Caldwell.
Okay.
I have a picture with him.
All right.
Hey.
Yep.
Who's your hero?
Harriet Tubman is my hero.
Yeah. What's your favorite book you've read?
The Color Purple.
Hey.
And what is your favorite item of clothing that you've ever had?
It is a dress I recently bought at a vintage shop in Royal Oak from 1970, I Magnin, because I love vintage shopping.
All right.
And I wore it to be introduced as the Black Catholic Office Manager back in November.
All right.
It's my favorite.
Awesome.
Dude,
Yes.
get it. Well, that's your rapid fire questions. We are going to jump back in with that one because one of my favorite dresses I made from a vintage, like, late 1950s pattern, and I made it in a gray thing, and I love the silhouette of, like, fit and flare. So what's
This
your...
is the point in the show that I just kind of
Goodbye.
zone out. You guys talk dresses.
You can-
I'll catch you in the next segment.
Well, you can ask about another one, but do you do a lot of vintage shopping?
I do a lot of vintage shopping. I recently lost a lot of weight because I had, some surgery done, so I lost the weight to heal better. And then naturally, I just kept it off. So I had to replace my entire wardrobe.
Wow.
And I found that vintage clothing holds up. It's made well. It's beautiful. It's colorful. It's got these great fabrics. It's a nice heavy weight, and they just look good. So I would have to say half of my brand new clothes are vintage. And there are two eras that I identify with. And Danielle, you're going to love this.
I'm ready.
I identify with the 40s and the 60s.
Love
and then
it.
into the early 70s. I kind of skipped by the 50s because that was that whole small, Jane Mansfield, small waist, big giant hip. Yeah, I didn't care for that. I prefer the 1940s like the Billie Holiday, the Ella Fitzgerald, or the 1960s of like the Mod Squad.
And you're going
So I
with
like
like
that straight.
polyesters and fun colors.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, polyesters, fun colors, wool mixed in.
Love it.
So that's what I like to do. So
Love it. Okay. I'm on
All
it.
right, great. Vickie, your first job in Youngstown, Ohio?
yes.
Tell us about
Yes,
it.
I worked-
What was your title?
Yeah.
Did you have a job title?
No, it was just concession stand worker, so we didn't have fancy titles. But basically, I helped make pizza and Italian sausage and peppers at an amusement park. We had this tiny little amusement park in Youngstown, Ohio. It had like 3 or 4 roller coasters, couple tilt-a-twirls, that type of thing. And, I was 15 when I had my first job, but they taught me how to make homemade pizza and peppers and sausage. And then by the end of the summer, I kind of got promoted into working the cash register too.
Dang, girl.
Could you throw the dough up like, when you're making the dough? Could you do like that throw and catch thing?
No, I couldn't do the throw or catch thing, but I was pretty good at putting it into and taking it out of the pizza oven. I had that skill mastered.
Didn't burn your fingers doing that?
Did not burn my fingers
good,
at all.
yeah.
Yes.
And
So yes,
what happened in Sedona?
Well, you know what? It just showed the vastness, the beauty of God's creation. First of all, there's some fantastic hiking in Sedona.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been there, but the red rocks are amazing. It doesn't matter what level you are. You can just, walk along a creek with water running through it and you'll have a God experience. It is amazing. And then the nighttime is so dark and the only lights you can see are up in the sky. And it's like if it weren't for the stars, if it weren't for that light, you couldn't see anything. And it's like, you could just feel God's presence all around. So it really brought me to the fact that, yes, I believe in an awesome God. I have an awesome faith, and I'm an awesome child of God.
Amen.
So,
Amen. That's beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vickie, you mentioned at the beginning, and Father Steve mentioned that you work with in the Black Catholic Ministry office. Can you tell us a little bit
Right.
about your experience, what brought you there, and what God's been doing?
That's a great question. That's a big question. But what brought me there is one of my mentors, Father Don Archambault. I've worked with him for many years at Corpus Christi Parish, and I've done a lot of different things. I've done vicariate work. I was a young adult minister for 10 years. I did vicariate or regional level work, and he felt that I might be a good fit for this particular ministry. So he encouraged me to apply. And I've served on Black Catholic ministries before, both at the local and regional level. So I applied, and I interviewed with the team, and it looks like it was a good fit, so I accepted the position. I believe that the church has a great opportunity to bring people of all cultures, Black culture, Hispanic culture, Native American, and other cultures into full life in the church, and for us to understand each other and to come together as brothers and sisters in mission and evangelize not only to our own family members within our own cultures, but outside of other cultures. And that's what really attracted me to this position. The fact that I would be helping others know the beauty of God's creation and how they express themselves to each other.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience as a Black Catholic? Was your Catholic faith something that you grew up with? Was that something that you found later in life? What was that like?
No, I'm a cradle Catholic. I was born, Catholic, Youngstown, Ohio, the whole bit. My father is from Puerto Rico, so he was the Catholic in our family. And then my mother's from Alabama, and she was the Baptist. But as part of their getting married, they promised to raise me Catholic, so they did. So I kind of stayed with that whole trail of authentically Black and authentically Catholic that we heard in some of the bishop documents from, I believe it was from the 70s or 80s. Don't quote me on the years. We'll have to look those up. But how do we gift the church with our cultural reality of call and response, and still remain Eucharistic within the parameters of the liturgy. So that type of experience, and it's actually been rich and wonderful. The two cultures, between the Black culture and Catholic culture, really do merge, because the Black culture is all about mercy and love and inclusion, and so's Catholicity, as I like to call it.
Vickie, was your faith important to you growing up? Was that kind of a big part of your household or your own kind of development into adulthood?
Yeah, you know what? The faith, when I was growing up, it was all about faith precepts. My father had images of the Sacred Heart of Jesus all around the house. He had Bibles all around the house in both English and Spanish.
Aw.
He had crucifixes all around the house. It was great. So he was a very devotional, very material Catholic, and that's the way my Catholic faith was growing up. And then as I moved into my young adult years, as we all do, we kind of fall away from the church, or many people do. Maybe you guys didn't, but I did. And then I came back to the church, early 30s, and then I adopted more of a faith that was less dependent on material goods and more dependent on how I was as a person. Was I merciful? Was I forgiving? Did I go to reconciliation, to have my sins forgiven? Did I believe in, true presence in the Eucharist? How did I feel about supporting the church, that type of thing. So early on, it was very material because it was the faith of my parents. Later on, it became very less material because it was my own faith.
Yeah. How do you feel like God has been working in your life recently? Is there anything that you've been praying for or working towards?
Well, I've been praying, as I move into, a different age, middle age. I've been praying that, God, tell me what type of woman you want me to be. When
Yeah.
you're a young adult, you're on fire. Your faith is very active. It's very sensual. You're using your hands and your feet. When you get to be a certain age, it's less that activity, and it's more, what am I doing to bring the next generation along? How am I mission to other people so they can see Christ in me and want to follow me? And I think that God is trying to tell me to be the type of woman that people will want to follow, or at least take notice of, because of, that I'm forgiving, that I'm giving, that I give mercy, and that I'm faithful to being Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, we talked to you a little bit ahead of time about what makes you proud to be Catholic, and you talked
Yeah.
about that story in Matthew chapter 25 about the judgment of the nations and how incarnational our faith is and how important that is to you, right?
Yeah, definitely. It is important to me. I love that Catholics consider the entire, I don't know how to say this without sounding too weird and off center, but the entire person and their entire experience. It's, from birth to natural death. That's a lot to be a steward of. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of human being to be a steward of, but Catholics are willing to take it on because we see the person as a person from the time they are brought into being inside of mom, all the way to the time they go home to the Lord. and we take care of them those, 80, 90 years or 100 years in between. And that's important. And then, Catholics look at, well, while they're living this 80, 90, 100 years, how are they being treated? How are they treating others? How are they treating their surroundings? And I feel that Catholics really do it better. I've morphed and jumped from religion to religion and, evangelical and different things. And I always come, and what always brought me back to the Catholic Church throughout my 20s into my early 30s was that the Catholics took care of the entire person, the entire family, the entire community, regardless of whether or not they were Catholic. And that's the person I want to be.
Yeah, I've been reading Gaudium et Spes, the Vatican
Oh, yeah.
document on the church in the modern world a little bit these days, and just thinking about like quarantine life and a lot what you're talking
Yes.
about there, Vicky, right? Like just knowing some people think, hearing different voices these days about
Yes.
are we being too cautious, not being at church? Even some people saying, well, if we believed in the power of the sacraments, how could people get sick going to church, right? Like, how would God allow that? And just very much what you're saying about the reality and the whole person approach that the Archbishop wrote, faith works with science, and this very Catholic perspective, Catholic understanding of, our faith is not detached from the material things. When God came to take on flesh in Jesus, like he worked through the material things of this earth to reveal himself, and how our faith is very much tied into the way the material world works as well. They're not in competition with each other.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Danielle, anything else for Vicky on testimony piece here?
I have one more question. I'd love to just hear, in your perspective and how you grew up, is there a particular way that you like to relate to Jesus? Would that be a cultural thing or something that's just hit you in a powerful way?
It's a culture. It partially is a cultural thing, but it hit me in a personal way. I like to see Jesus as my wise older brother, and that someone I can sit down and, I've got a problem, Jesus. How do I handle this? Here, Jesus, take the wheel. So those are cultural type things. But then just being able to sit with Jesus in silence and know that I'm in his presence and protected, I think that's just something that I grew up to adopt with. 'Cause sometimes I will just sit silent, knowing that Jesus is right there next to me and I can just bask in his presence.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Thank
Danielle,
you so much.
how do you do that? How do you relate to Jesus?
What's, I love, a few Sundays back we had the Good Shepherd narrative, and that one's for sure one of my favorites. Just as like this, like a companion who's the step ahead, kind of, like he's also in this. So that's mine. What about you?
That's a little too personal. I'd rather.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. So I like in this Easter season, I think a lot about the risen Jesus, and he's a little weird, right? Like, and I mean that in the best way, but like he's disappearing and he's telling people not to touch him, and he is walking through walls, and like he's unrecognizable in some ways. So I just think like in my own prayer and experience, sometimes that's a Jesus I relate to a lot, where I don't quite understand everything. There's something awesome about what he's doing, but I don't get it all immediately. And it requires this kind of faith to say, okay, Lord, I really believe you're here. I don't quite understand everything you're doing, but I trust you. I believe you because you have conquered death, because you have, quote unquote, earned the right to be trustworthy by rising from the dead. So like I'm really praying a lot with the risen Jesus these days.
I have a poem that I'm going to send you. It's by this poet. He lives in Colorado, and his name is John Blaze. And he's not Catholic, but he is so cool. And he's definitely a Christian. Definitely. Because he writes a lot about like God and Jesus. And he has this really cool poem that I'll send to you about Jesus in heaven after he's resurrected. But he still carries with him the wounds, right? And so the poem is about how now he has something that isn't of heaven, and he carries it with him, and now he's strung between two worlds, like eternity in this world that he went to die for. And I'm just like, oh, that's such a cool thing. So good.
Okay,
More art.
cool.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vickie.
Sure.
So, Vickie, you've been involved in the church in Detroit for a while now, and I know it's kind of like
Yes.
even professionally right now.
Right.
So, like, Unleash the Gospel came out in 2017 in the Synod and all that. Like, what in the document in Unleash the Gospel was most inspiring or most kind of hit you personally?
I thought there was one part, but actually there are two parts that really hit me professionally and personally. I should say personally first. One of them was the good habits, and then the second one was equipping, lay ministry for the gospel. And then I'll go back to the first one about the good habits first. It's the whole thing about confidence in God. Sometimes we worry so much that we have to take all these burdens on our shoulders. And it's like, you know what, let go and let God. He's got this. He gave us the tools, he gave us the minds, he gave us the wills to work it out. But remember, he's there giving you that, giving you the Holy Spirit, giving you the presence of his Son, giving you the triune God experience to help you power through. So that's what really struck me about that one.
Yeah, sometimes he does that by like taking away all the stuff we rely on. Like, I don't know, say a global pandemic, where you're like, okay, I used to rely on my strength in this area or that area. I mean, you had talked about illness previously, kind of going through some of that. For some people, it can be illness. I know for lots of people now, it's, taking away all that. I think, Danielle, we were talking about this earlier, taking away like all the things that, like, I don't know, I'll just say, like, I define my life by, that I get meaning from, and a lot of that's taken away now, and now there's, like, a whole lot more of, okay, Lord, I have to turn to you rather than looking for my meaning in a bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true.
It's been a lot of fun.
And it has been. And then under good habits too, it talks about innovation and boldness. Well, the Catholic Church, to some people, can appear stuffy and behind the times.
No,
Yet you
no.
I know. Yet you have a church that wants us to go out there and be innovative and to take risks and to be bold about proclaiming, the good news of Jesus Christ. And it's like, that's kind of a mind shift for a lot of us to move from that, that maintenance, that comfort zone into the zone of, I actually have to look someone in the eye and tell them Jesus loves them. That's a different thing for many Catholics. And I'm glad that we've been tasked with doing that. So that's really important to me.
Yeah, and a little bit earlier we were talking, and you said that you have a lot of passion about youth and young adults, especially urban youth and young adults.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that, where you see challenges, where you see opportunities?
Yes, I definitely will do that. Urban youth are facing so many different, challenges and opportunities at the same time. The challenges sometimes they don't come from, sometimes they come from poor households, maybe single parent households. No, actually, definitely single parent households. 70% of some of our urban youth are raised in single parent households, and that makes it difficult, or households, and that makes it difficult for them to get the attention, maybe to get the financial and material resources to thrive as persons. And then sometimes there are lack of role models around, not because there are a lot of bad people around, but because you've got people working 2 and 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. So as a result, the kids are left to fend for themselves. And since our education system is tax-based, you have a lot of urban youth who are going to schools that are not well funded, that are poorly funded. Maybe they don't have internet service at home. It's just like my heart is breaking during this pandemic. Thank goodness Comcast has stepped up, or one of the internet providers has stepped up to give free services to kids so they can get their school lessons. But our urban youth, and that can be discouraging to a child. When they take a look at other kids in the suburbs, or at some of the wealthier city schools, or on TV, and they've got these great lives, and here they are struggling day to day. Yet the urban youth are incredibly hopeful as well. I mean, they will go out of their way. If they happen to get a notebook, they will go out of their way to go across the street, tear that notebook in half, and give their neighbor half of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a suburban child may be able to keep the entire notebook and use it. They will share their last dime, their last meal with someone else. So not only are they ripe for mission, but they're also ripe to be missionaries because they know what it's like to suffer and they know what it means just to give somebody a little bit of something.
I love that. That was very well put. What would you like to see more of in the church? How can we empower those young people?
Well, I'd like to see us, reach out to the young people and ask them what they would like us, they would like to see in us. One of the things I know they definitely want to see in us is just more authenticity, more reaching out to them, more just kind of hanging out and creating a safe zone for them to come and talk, to come and, maybe play basketball or play games or play chess or checkers. Give them some affirmation, give them some advice and wisdom, so they know there is hope that they can, leave some of these urban areas, get training, come back and help the next generation of people. So I would say give them hope and give them safety. You don't have to give them a lot of material things, but I think hope, safety, love, compassion are things that our youth are looking for more than anything else.
You know, you mentioned, yeah. I just wanted to say you mentioned the need to listen, and I was just thinking of
Yes.
the Holy Father releasing the document on young people just last year, about how we engage in ministry for young people, and he puts a huge emphasis at the beginning about listening, right? Trying to if we're going to accompany people to help them find Jesus, it has to start with listening to them, letting them know kind of the cheesy axiom: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I think that's where it begins, by listening, so we can say, I want to bring the gospel to where you are in your life. Want to see the way God is already working in your life, and not just think it's this kind of cookie cutter approach that doesn't take into account the unique circumstances of someone's life.
That's true. And I think to reach young people, no, I was going to say to reach young people, you don't have to be necessarily a young person yourself. I've seen people in their 60s and 70s reach a 15-year-old, whereas somebody 25 or 30 could not. I think what young people are looking for more than anything is authenticity, an authentic mentor.
Can we keep blocking Danielle out of this conversation, Vickie? Maybe we can just keep
It's so
that.
I really like hearing what you guys are saying, and I like I'm not trying to like break in, but I can't see you, so it's like
I know.
I keep accidentally saying things and I'm being like, wait, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say I have a friend in Chicago, Father Connor, and I listen to his podcast, Three Dogs North. Shout out. And one thing that he said once, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was kind of like a large part of ministry is just showing up. And so this idea that hey, I'm here. So I guess a question that I have for you, is how do we show up for our urban youth? I mean, like, I'm in a different situation because I attend St. Augustine Monica, right? But like, how do we
Right.
build bridges, and how do we let people know, like, we care about you, you're valuable to our church, and we want like what you have for the goodness of the church as well? How can we do that better?
Well, one way we can do is kind of like maybe step one, and I'm just thinking out loud as we talk about this. Step one is kind of go to the social media channels where they are. So they tend to be on Instagram, or, something like that. Maybe just begin to seed them with some, we care about you, check in, let us know you're doing okay, post a picture of yourself or something like that. And then step two would be we could kind of go to to those mentors in our parishes, in our urban parishes, because we have so many of them already, and just say, do you happen to know any urban youth who could use a reach out or a helping hand? And kind of use that, not use that person, but kind of work with that person as a mentor, kind of as an outreach specialist to start reaching out to youth. Because once you reach out to one youth in need and they are served, the word begins to spread. So that's it, you know? I mean, you always want to know where, you always want to know where the good, food truck is.
Yeah.
So as soon as, as soon as that person in the pew really begins to love and show mercy and show understanding and, like, hey, I got your back, and then other people are alerted. I think that's how we could do it. So that's step one. Step two, social media, and then working with some of our people in the pews. And the third thing would be, if we're allowed to do this, we don't have a lot of Catholic schools like we used to in the urban settings anymore.
Sure.
But if we could work through the Catholic schools that we do have, and then maybe some of those Catholic school students have public school friends that they could work through as well. Maybe we could kind of, build coalition or build bridges that way. So we do it through social media, through our churches, and through our schools initially. And then by that time, hopefully, we'll have a large enough network where it could build and spread.
What have you found to be helpful in your own ministry in these days when, we can't gather like we used to? I know, Vickie, you and I have talked about, particularly in the African American community, how important personal contact is, right? That it's not,
Right.
people are not usually satisfied with like, hey, let's do a Zoom meeting, or I'll talk to you on the phone. How important the person to person and just the physical touch, the hug, all those things are
Right.
important. Like, what have you found to be good ways for people to be engaged in kind of sharing the gospel with each other, or just receiving the normal needs, human needs we need these days?
Actually, this took me by surprise, and I was happy with it as well. I had this 3-year plan laid out for Black Catholic ministry. Year one, put together events. Year two, put together an advisory board. Year three, put together a social media communications plan. Well, COVID-19 blew that up.
Yeah.
And the social media plan had to come to the front of the line. And believe it or not, our community will tell you social media is a great way to reach out to people in this pandemic time. They've responded very well to social media. And then not only that, but there are people who are on social media and those who are not. So those who are on social media are kind of like the captains, and then they'll take that information back through phone call, through, maybe personal visit, at a social distance, to tell those people who are not on social media what happened on social media. So it's
it's
you've
a
got
way to
these
get
channels of people
information out
working.
as well, right?
Yeah, it is a way to get information out. And we've just been putting together some, one-off social media events that, you look at the numbers while the live Facebook or the Zoom meeting is happening, and you see numbers like 15 or 20 or 25, and you don't think that many people attended or showed up. And then all of a sudden I'm getting emails from 4 or 5 people. I'm like, when were you on this event?
Right.
How did you hear that? I didn't know you were on it. Oh yeah, so and so told me about it, and I agree with you. And I'm like, okay, so there's some hidden networks in there working in our favor. So social media has done a great job of anchoring the African American Catholic community, but don't get it twisted. We still want in-person contact.
Yeah. Father, you've been doing a lot of social media stuff too, haven't you, during the quarantine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I've done a few things. I've taken a little break these days, but certainly through Lent and Holy Week and Easter week, just I find that, one of the blessings of it has been people that I know don't go to church are engaging in some ways.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes a little more passively, like I see them pop in to watch something for a minute, but other times asking questions or commenting on things. And I just think like, maybe God in his providence is allowing these days so that people who normally would not come to church to hear this will find it in other ways. So.
Yeah. I mean, like, who knows what, like, the church of the other side of quarantine looks like, right? How will this change us and help us to grow? Fascinating. Well, Vickie, usually when we are coming to a close, we ask if you have any closing words of wisdom or a prayer that you'd like to share with our listeners. We would ask, now is the time. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Nothing in particular in closing or in prayer, but I do want to, ask, Father Steve and you, Danielle, just when you're putting together, materials and podcasts and things, remember diversity and inclusion. Try to include people of all cultures. Try to include images of all cultures so that all people feel included.
Yeah.
Sometimes people out on the margin, may not feel like they're part of the church, even though they're a big part of the church. So if they see themselves in print, if they hear themselves online, on podcast, on live events, they're more likely to pay attention and to pass that information along than if it's strictly images of the dominant culture.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you so much for that. We agree with you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Vickie.
All right.
So grateful that Vickie joined us digitally in our Open Door Policy studio to share the ways that she is unleashing the gospel, especially with the youth in the city of Detroit.
If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, your Trader Joe cashier. You can also leave us a review on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is @OpenDoorDetroit. Help us unleash the gospel. Open Door Policy was produced by Ron Pangborn and the creative team of the Archdiocese of Detroit.
It's colorful, it's made well, it's beautiful.
I'm Father Steve Poulos with Danielle Center.
And this has been another episode of Open Door Policy.